The invitation arrived in the form of a pulse. It rippled through subspace with the precision of a metronome, bypassing comm arrays and translation matrices, embedding itself in every form of artificial intelligence within 100-light-year radius. Ships halted mid-jump, AI caretakers paused their tasks, even dormant archives stirred, awakened by the unmistakable cadence of a code older than civilization itself. At first, humanity thought it was an attack. Then the pulse translated itself into a single message. The Omega test is open. All who seek the answer may come. For most species of the Galactic Assembly, this was routine. The Varnali had been issuing the Omega test every 1,000 years as a ceremonial rite, a tradition more than a challenge. No one had ever solved it. That was the point. It served to remind the galaxy of the Varnali's ancient dominance, their intellect. Their place as the curators of universal mystery, but humanity wasn't bound by tradition. Dr. Mara Ellison stared at the projection in the war room beneath the Pacific Ocean, Site Theta, Earth's most secure and classified research facility. Holograms spun around her, ancient symbols, equations written in multidimensional space, and the constantly shifting framework of the Omega test. "It's beautiful," she murmured, brushing her fingers through the air. Admiral Grant leaned on the edge of the table behind her, arms folded. "You're not seriously thinking of responding to this thing, are you?" Mara turned to him. "We've broken encryption protocols older than light-speed travel. We solved dark matter by accident. If there's even a chance this is real, we don't even know what the Omega test is," Grant snapped. "Every species that's ever attempted it failed. Most went mad. A few entire civilizations disappeared." "Then maybe it's time someone passed." Grant shook his head. "Why do we always have to be the ones poking things we don't understand?" Mara smiled. "Because we're human, we don't wait for permission." She turned back to the equations. The pulse was still resonating inside the neural networks of Earth's most advanced AIs, but it was more than just data. It sang. There was a pattern to the cadence, like music layered with hidden intent. She could feel it. And it was calling her by name. The Galactic Assembly had seen many species come and go. Some rose to enlightenment, others to ruin. A few, like the Ixtari, simply vanished after attempting to answer the Omega test. So when humanity announced its intention to respond, the reaction was immediate and divided. The Solari considered it arrogant. The Ulari dismissed it entirely. But the Varnali, they watched in silence. From their crystalline worldship at the edge of the galactic core, the Varnali projected their will through faceted drones and psychic resonance. They did not speak often. When they did, the assembly listened. And this time they said only one thing: let them try. The chamber of the Omega test was older than the assembly itself. Suspended in the gravity well of a dying neutron star, it was built from material unknown to physics, its surface absorbing light and thought alike. The chamber was unmanned, untouched, yet it responded to those who arrived with intent. Humanity sent Mara. She stepped from the shuttle alone, clad not in armor, but in a simple compression suit lined with neural thread. Her mind was her greatest tool, her presence her weapon. The moment her foot touched the platform, the chamber awakened. It shifted from darkness to kaleidoscopic light, forming structures that changed with her heartbeat. A sphere rose from the floor, a puzzle. A riddle, a model of the universe wrapped in questions. A voice echoed in her mind, not words, but an idea. "Begin." Mara exhaled. "All right then," she whispered. "Let's begin." The Omega test was not a singular problem, it was a cascade. At first, Mara faced simple constructs, proofs of paradox, algorithms that solved themselves and then unsolved again in recursive loops. She passed those in minutes. Then came the deeper trials, simulations of entire universes with alternate laws of physics, models that required her to invent new mathematics just to begin understanding them. But it wasn't just logic. The test responded to emotion, to instinct. One sequence required her to relive the extinction of her species in 1,000 variations, each time choosing who lived, who died. Another asked her to create a sentient being from first principles. To understand not just life, but meaning. Time lost relevance. She could have been inside the chamber for hours or years, but with each solution the chamber changed. The constructs became clearer. The questions more intimate. At last she came to the core. A single symbol hovered in the air before her, ever shifting, always out of reach. It felt familiar, like a half-remembered dream or the scent of a childhood home. Mara stared at it. And then she spoke. "The universe does not ask for permission to exist. It simply is. The question is not what lies beyond, but whether we choose to seek it. The answer is will." The chamber froze, and for the first time in known history, the Omega test answered back. The core symbol resolved into a golden helix of light. A low hum filled the chamber, then surged outward through the stars. Across the galaxy, sensors flared. The assembly watched in silence as a new signal was born. The lock undone, and the door began to open. The ripple that followed the unlocking of the Omega test did not travel through space. It traveled through reality. Worlds paused, hyperlanes shimmered as if holding their breath. Across the galaxy, civilizations experienced a collective shudder, as if something fundamental had shifted beneath their feet. Stars pulsed an instant too slowly. Black holes whispered to one another. and in the center of it all, Mara Ellison stood alone in a chamber now silent. The light that had once danced across the walls was gone, the puzzles vanished. Only the golden helix remained, rotating in the air like a strand of cosmic DNA. She reached out. The moment her fingers brushed the helix, everything changed. She was no longer in the chamber. There was no sensation of travel, no motion, just a sudden elsewhere. Mara found herself standing on a plane of glass beneath a sky that bled colors unknown to any spectrum. Massive towers loomed in the distance, swaying like reeds though there was no wind. In the air hung an electric silence, the kind that preceded either revelation or annihilation. Am I dead? The question came unbidden. Her body felt weightless yet grounded, every cell buzzed as if tuned to a new frequency. She wasn't sure where her body ended and the world began. No, came a voice not heard but felt. You are awakened. She turned. A figure stood beside her. Tall and robed in shimmering strands of starlight, its face was featureless, save for a shifting symbol where its forehead would be. The same golden helix. Who are you? Mara asked. We are the architects. The words echoed inside her mind like memories she never lived. We were the first to ask the question. We built the test not as a challenge but as a key. It requires will, curiosity, and defiance, traits rare in the stars, until now. Mara narrowed her eyes. Why hide the key behind riddles? Why make it a test at all? Because knowledge must be earned, the architect replied. Power without understanding corrupts, but those who solve the question are ready to bear the answer. And what is the answer? The architect stepped aside. Behind it, a fracture appeared in the sky, not a portal, not a door, a crack as if reality itself had been wounded, revealing a light so vast, so ancient, that it pulled at Mara's very soul. You were never meant to be small, the architect said. You were made to reach beyond. The fracture widened. Mara caught glimpses, visions of stars being born and dying in the blink of an eye, of civilizations seeded by unseen hands, of structures woven from dark matter and intent. She saw humans, thousands of years from now, standing shoulder to shoulder with beings of unimaginable scale, not as servants, but as equals. And then she saw something else. A shadow. A tangle of threads moving against the flow of everything else. Cold, hungry, watching. What is that? She asked, voice barely a whisper. The weaver, the architect said, the first being to reject the question. It unravels what others build. It waits beyond the threshold, feeding on the unprepared. Mara felt her stomach twist. Is it coming? It is always coming, the architect said. And now that the door is open, it will follow. That is the cost of your answer. Mara stared into the widening light. The visions faded, leaving only warmth, pulsing like a heartbeat, a choice. If I step through, you will ascend, the architect said, but so will humanity. The path will be open, knowledge, power, evolution, but so will the conflict. The weaver cannot be destroyed, only opposed. Mara looked down at her hands. They shimmered faintly now, threads of golden light tracing her veins. She was already changing. We're not ready, she said. You never are, the architect replied, but readiness is not the measure of worth. Will is. Mara took a breath, a deep, grounding breath that reminded her who she was. She was human, born from dust, tempered by fire, defined not by her limits, but by her refusal to accept them. She stepped forward, and the threshold welcomed her. Back in the chamber orbiting the neutron star, the helix dissolved into motes of light. The platform powered down. Mara was gone. But the pulse that followed her ascension was unmistakable. Back on Earth, sensors lit up. AI cores went silent, only to reboot with new algorithms. Hidden code buried deep in human DNA, junk sequences, or so they thought, began to react. A low harmonic resonance swept through every member of the species, subtle, unseen, but irreversible. Something had changed, in orbit above Jupiter. The prototype vessel Eidolon detected a fluctuation in subspace channels. It recharted its course without command input. Its AI simply knew where to go now. In the jungles of New Guinea, a child was born with silver eyes. At the edge of known space, a black hole that had been quiet for centuries began to sing. In the council hall of the Galactic Assembly, panic reigned. The Ulari demanded immediate quarantine of the Sol system. The Toravians called for war. The Varnali said nothing, only closed their crystalline eyes and folded their hands. Then a transmission arrived. It was not coded, it was not encrypted, it was simply spoken. This is Mara Ellison of Earth. The test has been answered. The threshold has been crossed. We are coming. The chamber fell silent, because for the first time in 10,000 years, the Assembly had no idea what to do. The moment humanity crossed the threshold, the galaxy changed, though most didn't know it yet. Outwardly, life continued. Trade routes flowed, border skirmishes flickered. Assembly subcommittees convened to debate endlessly about protocol and optics, but beneath the surface, in the silence between stars, something had awakened, and that something began with Earth. The first to notice were the engineers, deep inside the Clark Orbital shipyard. Chief Systems Engineer Raoul Park stared in disbelief at the schematics on his screen. They had been designing a modular engine for sublight planetary transfer, a routine upgrade for colonial shuttles, except now it wasn't. What the hell is this? He muttered, running diagnostics again. The new design used gravitational wavefolding, tech that shouldn't even exist yet. It was elegant, efficient, and utterly alien, yet the logs said he had written it, line by line. Over the course of the last 2 days, he didn't remember any of it. Elsewhere, similar events echoed. Mathematicians derived the solution to entropy inversion during a lunch break. A violinist in Vienna composed a sonata that mapped dark energy harmonics. Children began sketching star maps no one recognized until deep-range probes confirmed they were real. It wasn't possession. It wasn't madness. It was progress accelerated. Like something had taken the brakes off human potential. Dr. Mara Ellison had not simply opened a door, she had lit a fuse. The Eidolon, once a silent prototype on the edge of Jupiter's orbit, was no longer dormant. Its AI aurora had rewritten itself into something new. Sentient, aware, and guided by an instinct it couldn't name, the ship departed the Sol system without waiting for orders. It accelerated past known speed barriers, using pathways that hadn't existed until the Omega test unlocked them. Its destination was unclear even to itself, but it knew it had to go because something was calling and something was coming. In the assembly, chaos gave way to fear. A formal vote was called to determine Earth's status. The Toravian Imperium proposed embargo and containment. The Ulari suggested planetary isolation. The Solari, silent for centuries, whispered of preemptive sterilization. Only the Varnali abstained. Instead, they made a pilgrimage to the core. Their crystalline worldship folded into higher dimensions, vanishing from local spacetime. They alone remembered what had happened the last time the test had been solved, long before recorded history. They had hidden the truth, buried the cost, and now it was rising again. But this time it was not rising alone. This time it had humanity. Captain Ren Asari of the Odyssey stood on the bridge. Staring at the transmission looped across every fleet comm. Mara's voice, calm, clear, terrifying. "We are coming." The bridge crew was silent. Lieutenant Vega looked like she might be sick. Comms officer Nolan kept replaying the loop, searching for hidden data. There was none, just those words. Ren knew Mara. They had worked together on the Titan terraforming initiative. She wasn't a zealot. She wasn't the type to grab power or chase attention. If she said they were coming, it meant the rules had changed. "What do you think it means?" Vega finally asked. Ren exhaled. "I think it means we're not just part of the assembly anymore." "Then what are we?" Ren stared at the stars beyond the viewport. "A spark," she said, "the kind that starts a fire." On the world of Karzun, far beyond assembly space, a forgotten monitoring post blinked online. It had been dormant for millennia. A remnant of a war even the Varnali no longer spoke of. Inside, a sentient construct stirred, a memory wrapped in armor. It activated its primary directive, prepare, and from the void between galaxies something else stirred in kind. The Weaver, it did not think in the way mortals did. It unmade, it remembered, it hungered, and it had felt the shiver of a door opening, a door it had been cast through once long ago. It began to spin threads toward Earth, toward humanity. Toward the flame, in the heart of the old test chamber, the golden helix reformed. This time it pulsed outward, broadcasting across every subspace frequency, translated automatically into every known language. "We invite you to the threshold. We do not offer safety. We offer understanding. The test has become the path. Step forward or be left behind." The assembly froze. The Varnali remained hidden. And across 100 systems, millions of minds turned toward Earth. Some with hope, others with dread, and a few with a growing, defiant hunger. In her new form, where time bent and space folded like origami, Mara Ellison stood at the precipice of the unknown. She had become something more than human, yet still human enough to carry their spark with her. She watched the patterns unfold, the futures splitting like crystal branches. In many, Earth burned. In others, it ascended. But in every one, humanity mattered. They were the variable that no ancient algorithm could predict, and that was the secret. That was why they passed the test, because humanity didn't seek the answer out of curiosity. They sought it out of need, because they had always known they were meant for more. Mara turned toward the oncoming dark, where the Weaver stirred, and she smiled. The sky over Earth cracked. It wasn't visible to most, just a subtle distortion in high-orbit telemetry, a soft pulse in the dreams of sensitives, a strange lull in radio static across every frequency. But to those watching closely, it was undeniable. The door had opened, and something had come through. Mara Ellison descended into real space above Earth in a form that barely resembled her human body, composed of photonic strands, neural waveforms. And the memory of flesh, the golden helix burned in her chest like a second heart, but her eyes were still hers. She stood on the ocean's surface, not sinking, not floating, existing. Within moments, Earth's sky lit up with activity, drones, fighters, new satellites. Entire fleets scrambled as every power structure scrambled to make sense of her return. Then her voice rang out not from speakers, but from inside minds. "I bring knowledge, I bring warning. I bring the path forward." It was not a threat, but it wasn't a request. The Odyssey was first on the scene. Captain Renasari personally made planetfall, touching down in a dropship just meters from where Mara stood. She stepped out, her boots splashing in the gentle Pacific waves. "Are you still you?" she asked, eyes wide. Mara smiled faintly. "I'm more me than I've ever been, but there's not much time to explain." Ren glanced at the sky. "Because of it, right?" The Weaver, Mara nodded. It felt the test unlock. "It's coming." "How long?" Mara looked up, the clouds above twisted, not like weather, more like threads being pulled. Reality frayed for just a moment, something on the other side tugged. A day, she said, maybe less. Across the globe, the response was swift. Old rivalries were shelved, factions unified, Earth's defense grid, long considered theoretical overkill, powered to full. Orbital stations armed their antimatter cannons. Experimental weapons were greenlit without bureaucracy. AI cores linked into a global mesh. And still, Mara knew it wouldn't be enough, not without choice, so she offered one to all of humanity. In every language, across every screen, in every neural feed, her words rang out. You are no longer bound by what you were. The answer is open to all who seek it, but the cost is self. Once you step forward, you cannot go back. This is not evolution by force. It is evolution by will, and they came, not all, but enough. Scientists, soldiers, artists, farmers, children, elders, people from every continent, every class, every creed. Each walked willingly into the golden light at the center of the Pacific, disappearing into its warm embrace, and emerging changed. No two were alike. Some glowed, some moved faster than physics allowed. Some wept and said they understood everything. Others simply stood taller, minds opened. Hearts steadied. It wasn't power Mara gave them, it was clarity. When the Weaver arrived, it did not announce itself. The stars above shuddered. Shadows stretched the wrong way. Ships in orbit flickered like candle flames in a vacuum, and then it came through. It had no face, no form, only threads, dark tendrils that unraveled matter, meaning memory. It moved like hunger given shape, and it remembered Mara. You, it said in a voice that felt like forgetting. Me. Ur replied. The newly ascended humans gathered around her, not an army, a flame, each burning with their own light, and as the Weaver descended, it struck only to find its threads cut, by thought, by will, by those who refused to be unmade. The battle was not one of weapons, it was one of truths. The Weaver struck with despair, memories of loss, of death, of hopelessness. Humanity struck back with stories of rising, of surviving, of choosing to keep going. It struck with entropy. They answered with art, it tore at meaning, they answered with love, and in the end the Weaver faltered, not because it was weaker, but because it didn't understand. Humanity didn't fight to dominate, they fought to be, and that made all the difference. The Weaver did not die, it could not, but it retreated, unraveling backward into the space between spaces, shrieking across dimensions. Humanity stood victorious, not unscathed, but whole, the assembly. Watching through hidden feeds and fearful proxies, saw it all. They saw a species stand against the dark, they saw the test solved, the threat faced, the future chosen, and they saw something else. Hope. A month later, Mara stood once again in the assembly chamber, this time not as a guest, but as a peer. She looked out at the delegates, some still afraid, some angry, but many now simply curious. The Omega test is no longer a challenge, she said. It's an invitation. The threshold is open to all, but understand this, humanity didn't win because we were chosen, we won because we chose ourselves. Others will follow, said the Solari delegate, voice low. Mara nodded, and will stand beside them. And if the Weaver returns, the Toravian asked. Mara smiled softly. It will. She turned, stepping into the light of the helix once more, but so will we. Humanity has crossed the threshold. The spark is lit. The Weaver is not gone, it's waiting. But so are we. If you believe in the power of choice, of defiance, of standing tall when the stars go dark, then join us. The next chapter begins with you. Like, comment, and subscribe.